Now you've achieved much of this success over the heavy burden and having to navigate the huge adversity of being coached by me. And so I'd love you to go back, and if you can recollect, what was the motivation to join Purple Patch? I mean, I was obviously, we grew up 10 miles from each other or so, but I live in San Francisco. You still live in the area, London and the east side of London and Essex. So what was the catalyst? What was the motivation?
Well, interestingly, it was here, right? We
Yeah.
remember we met here. I was doing the World Championships back in 2016. You were invited along to give a talk to the group that I was with, and it was destiny. It was almost fated. I just thought there was a click around sort of chemistry, right? Because the way you spoke, there was just a fun element to it. There was a humor to it. I think at that time, it had become a bit mechanical for me. It was do the program, tick through, but some of the joy was not there, and some of the sort of pushing through discomfort was not there. I got used to it, but you sort of injected a sort of fun element, but the fun masked a serious intent behind it. There's always a message behind the fun that you could get, and I just thought, hey, there was a kind of click. I think you said it was almost, how did we end up meeting each other? Why wouldn't I want to be coached by you?
Yeah, it was, and I felt like, because it wasn't in Kona itself where it was just a trigger. We met a few times at these races, and I think we ended up tying the knot, as it were, in Chattanooga.
Yeah,
I think was my memory. Yeah, following
year.
year. So a year later, we said, okay, let's do this, and it was great. It's really funny. You sort of talk about serious intent with the fun part of it. One of our brand values that you might not know, but it's serious with a wink. So we're actually deadly serious about performance. We take it, it's an important part of people's lives. They put a lot of investment into it, but it's okay to enjoy it. It's okay to have fun. It's okay to actually make it a bigger part of life. So that makes my heart sing that you talked about that. And the reason that I wanted to go back there and start of what was the motivation is that you already had a pretty rich history of completion of these events. You'd done well. It wasn't like you were trying to get across the finish line of your first Ironman or anything. You had all of this. Suddenly now you're engaged in a coaching relationship, and so change occurs, and change is not always easy. So I'd love to reflect on the biggest, almost initial shifts in perspective, mindset, and approach as we started working with each other. What changed for you?
I think, and you often talk about this, the key one right at the outset was this whole concept of integrating it into life. I think what I was pursuing before, I said it felt quite mechanical, and it felt quite separate from all the things that I was doing in my professional life. At that stage, I'd just taken on a big new role at Deloitte. I was traveling all around the world. 3 weeks out of 4, I was not in the UK, and I was on some long haul flight, and I was just trying to do the sorts of things I did before, and it was not integrated. It was just two things almost competing with each other for my time and attention. And it was this concept of, no, let's just integrate it, and let's think about the coaching within the context of the rhythms of what life's going to be. Recognize that there'll be sometimes you're going to be doing lots of traveling. How do we integrate within that? Recognize, right, you're going to be getting off the plane. What are you going to do as soon as you get off the plane? And just some of those, I really just hadn't thought about it in that way in terms of how to integrate it.
It really is. I mean, I've talked on the show a lot about the ebbs and flow of life, and like sometimes it flows, and you have to be brave enough to not actually try and execute as much training, or at least, and that might become in terms of intensity of training sometimes, because your body can't absorb it, or of course total hours of training. And other times you have a little bit of a break, and you can let the training flow a little bit when life ebbs. I've got to say, you were in that period, and it was really the first couple of years that we were working with each other, it was probably one of the most challenging travel schedules and stress. I mean, you had a very big bucket of life stress insofar as demands, competing demands, navigating time zones, etc. It was hugely important. I think the word for me that we tried to really weave together was consistency. That was the big thing. And my observation was, whenever you take, and I always talk about this, but whenever you take a training program and dump it on top of life that's like that, that's never going to be sustainable. So how do we actually remove the big hits and actually say, let's just have a through line of consistency? And if we could do that, that would be really important. I'd also reflect a little bit in preparation for this. I thought about early Panos, and I'm going to sort of almost highlight what I'm known for, but recovery was really important as well. And do you sense that? I felt you were very under recovered because those things were competing in each other. So as soon as you got back, you're like, okay, now I'm going to track up, and so sleep would be compromised. Remember those early years? That was very much the case.
Massively so. And I would say that this concept of less is more, and prioritizing consistency over heroism. Definitely knows earlier in that sort of triathlon, it was almost heroic to say, right, I worked 15 hours today, and then I'm going to go and do a run at 10 or 11 o'clock at night, because then I can tick it, and what a hero I am. And then you wake up the following morning, you feel terrible, and you could sort of maintain it for 2 or 3 weeks, and then everything would come crashing down. So it was this consistency over heroism is how I'd characterize it.
It's actually, if you go back to those early experiences, those childhood experiences of toughness, hard work, and you were just layering on that, and it was just expressed through this film. It's funny though, a lot of people would, particularly folks that don't compete in Ironmans and don't compete in half Ironmans, and listen to this and say, but how did he even have time in the first place? And so when those early years, all the way through, Rolls Royce was very, very busy as well, and you had all of the global travel. How did you even begin to carve out time for this thing? Why not just go to the gym for 40 minutes?
I'd say it's a combination of two things. There's stubbornness and curiosity. That would be and maybe those are sort of slightly innate traits I've got. And I'll give you an example, right, around the stubbornness. Where I can remember at both Deloitte and at Rolls Royce, as I got these sort of bigger roles. I can remember at Deloitte, one of the senior partners, 10 years older than me, from Manchester actually, who's a very good friend of mine, and I've sort of completely in the right space now. He wrote to me and he said, "No, you've got this great new role. That's it. You can't do any more of this marathon and triathlon stuff. It doesn't work like that. Now you have to be 4 evenings a week. You're going to be out for dinner. This is how you do things." And the sort of stubbornness came out. No, I found a way to do things before. There must always be a different way, because I know if I'm exercising, if I'm doing sport in a sort of joyful way, it makes me feel better. It helps around what I'm doing in my professional life. So I'm gonna. And he was the one that 5 years later was ended up like I was, and he said, and we had some coaching around it, and he just said, changed my life, changed my relationship with my family. You're right, it didn't have to be done that way. So there was this stubbornness around. There's some things that have helped me be successful in the past and that make me up. I don't want to compromise those as I get a bigger and bigger role, because it'll only make me less happy, or it'll make me miserable. And then the other element was this curiosity, which is I'm always thinking about, I'm wondering if there's another way of doing this. Does it always have to be done in this way? That's just a bit dull and boring. Is there a different way of doing things?